So I'm going ahead and starting. I want to welcome everyone to this month's Seniors Living Smarter seminar webinar with our great topic of Are You Prepared for Aging in Place? It's always a very popular topic, which you're going to be talking about with a lot of resources today and some questions to help us plan ahead mindset-wise also for what would be helpful. I'm Virginia Lazenby. I'm a certified senior downsizing coach and realtor. I'm the founder and host of the Seniors Living Smarter seminars. For those of you who are new, this is our 6th year of doing the monthly seminars. We skipped December. Um, they were seminars, live seminars until COVID. And now we've been webinars since last April. And I have a neat announcement. We'll talk about it at the end too, probably. But I know a lot of people have been asking, when are we going to go live? We missed the one-on-one interaction. Our first live seminar will be in August. We will return to First Presbyterian, and we are so excited about that. July, they have a vacation Bible school going on, and they said there would be a lot of activity at the church. So we're going to wait until August to resume there. I can hear some of you going, yay, we'll be in person. I can hear others of you going, oh no, I like watching from the convenience of my couch. And if I want to be in my pajamas, that's great. So you will still have the opportunity. We're not going to live stream, but we will record the sessions and they'll go up on our blog as they are now, but we will be live. And we'll talk more about that next time too, but I'm really looking forward to that. So just to remind people always that, our goal of these seminars is to educate, equip, and inspire seniors to make informed decisions and empowered choices. And I've just been thrilled over the 6 years to see a lot of great conversations coming out of this. I often hear people say, well, I'm keeping all of my resources so I can share them with my family and if they need to help me in planning. And today's topic will be a very important one for that. I want to thank a couple of people. Jeff Cramp has been working with me on marketing and then assumed our Zoom coordinator role and being our Zoom tech person. So we appreciate Jeff Cramp's work on that. And Brielle Gard is with us as an administrative assistant to Seniors Living Smarter Services. And she'll be on today in part 2. She's done a lot of the research that we're going to be sharing in terms of researching the resources that we will be providing to you as we follow up after the webinar. We also have our panelists, our sponsors who help make these seminars possible. And I just want to briefly introduce our sponsors, and then you're going to be hearing, our new format has been we spotlight a sponsor each month, but I do want to give a shout out to, I don't know if the slides are still showing or not. Okay. So our sponsor, Silver Key Benefit, you've heard them from time to time. Vera Bank, Visiting Angels, who you will be hearing from today, is our spotlight sponsor. The Wesleyan is a sponsor, and Seniors Living Smarter Services. That's my business that we're a sponsor. So we thank them. They are very committed and see the value, the importance of seniors having information. And that's the reason we work together to, as we say, to educate, equip, and inspire seniors to make decisions. So I'd like to at this time hear from our spotlight sponsor, Stacy Scarborough with Visiting Angels. So would you give us a quick overview of what you contribute to seniors?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. We are honored to sponsor this amazing education. So my name is Stacy. I'm with Visiting Angels Home Care of Georgetown, and this is a wonderful solution when looking at aging in place. So when you want to try and stay in your home as long as possible, typically we're going to need some extra assistance at some point. So you can hire caregivers in the home, temporary or long-term, for a schedule of 1 hour up to 24 hours, any day of the week, Monday through Sunday. So someone can just look at what your needs are, how often you might want some extra help. It could be just to get over surgery recovery and you only need help for a couple of weeks, or you want it ongoing on a weekly basis, and we can help out with anything non-medical. So a caregiver can come in and assist with personal care, transportation assistance, as well as homemaker services, which includes things like light cleaning, laundry, making meals. We also help with med reminders, safety assistance, and companionship. Typically, this service is paid for out of pocket. So you will want to ask an agency what their hourly rate might be. It can be covered by long-term care insurance. There are some agencies that will pay for home care through Medicaid. And then the VA also has some benefits for veterans. So we are one of those providers where you can get some coverage through the VA, as well as the Area Agency on Aging. So that is a nonprofit that can pay for some temporary assistance, and we are one of those providers as well. So as you are doing some research into aging in place, I would encourage you to call some home cares, ask some questions, and just kind of compare and see if there's one out there that seems like a good fit for you.
Thanks, Stacy. And Stacy did a great introduction to what our whole topic will be about today, too. And we'll be sharing more resources. One of the resources we have for you is questions to ask caregivers. So, and Stacy just said the importance of knowing what services people provide, interview, compare what works best for you. So we appreciate Visiting Angels as being one of the sponsors for the ongoing Seniors Living Smarter seminars. So our topic today, we're going to turn to that. Are you prepared for aging in place? And today we have with us a very special expert panelist, Mary Faith Sterk, who's quite involved throughout Williamson County. We're delighted she could be with us today. And often we've done this topic, we have the providers of different kinds of services, and it's very important. We're going to be sharing a lot of those contacts today. But I asked Mary Faith to join us to kind of help us think through more of what issues do we need to consider. She has a world of experience and expertise. So Mary Faith, tell us a little bit about your background and why you're here today.
Well, I'm absolutely honored to be here. I've lived here in Williamson County for ever since I was a student at Southwestern University, so it goes back a way. But I've been very blessed to be able to work here in many capacities, and sometimes we laughingly say from womb to tomb, but working in everything from prenatal and children's services to senior services, working in hospitals, working in outpatient, working in public health, working in mental health, so that all of those things over my career have given me an opportunity to really learn what people need and want in reality, as opposed to theoretically, which sometimes are not the same thing. So I'm honored to be able to participate with you all, answer any questions you may have, and just walk through what that journey might look like together. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and have been working in medical care, community care, and psychiatric care for many years.
So she covers a lot of bases. And so we really appreciate your taking time to be with us and helping us in planning for this. What we've done for the program today is identified key areas related to aging in place. And we're going to talk through some of that. As I said, we have a lot of resources that we will be sharing. Riel stepping to call some of those to our attention also. But we know that for so many people, our goal is to age in place. That can mean a whole variety of things. That can mean from, you want to say, often people say, you're going to carry me out in a wooden box. Well, there may be some things that happen along the way that preclude that. But what can we do to maintain our independence, our safety, and be prepared? I think the challenge we often face is that we're always going to get ready in the future. I don't need this right now, so I'm not going to do it. And this is a little delicate balance. If we wait until we need some things taken care of, it's probably after a crisis has occurred, and then it's a little late to do the planning. So we just keep encouraging people to plan. So we're going to start in on these different categories. Mary Faith is going to join us to tell probably some stories and resources to help us put it all together. I just want to remind you that as a follow-up to the seminar, you will get an email that will have links, and sometimes we will have PDF attachments, so we'll be referencing those today. So home environment, that's always a big one. What do we need to get our home ready for our safety? And we reach that point. You know, we have our homes decorated lovely for our lifestyle. At some point, we might need to make some changes to keep the environment safe for us. And one of the resources that we wanted to highlight, it's an amazing resource. It's actually through AARP. They have a home fit worksheet, and it really becomes much more than that for each room, or you can go to that website, that link, and help us think through, because we know some general things about removing the little rugs that we can trip over, making sure they're not cords in our ways, they're adequate lighting, but also just making sure we can navigate through a home. Water heaters, if they're turned really hot, for those of us who like really hot showers, sometimes it reaches a point we need to reduce that temperature for our own safety. But those are the kinds of things that are mentioned in there. Also, many of you have heard, we've had Megan Fraser on our panel before. She's with Functional Stability and Mobility, and she offers a great evaluation. They will come into your home and help evaluate how to make it as safe as possible. I've had a lot of adult children who found that very helpful, that they can use that to help parents plan. So there are lots of ways. We'll have the contact information for Megan available to you. And when we look at that, knowing what other kinds of mobility equipment, we have a list of some of the providers such as Martin Mobility, Georgetown. There are others that can help us with those if we need a chair to help lift us up. But we have a variety of resources, but we just need to be thinking safety and mobility. Mary Faith, comments you want to add about that from your own experience with people?
Sure. I think that when we think about home environment, we think about it from, and Virginia and I talked about this, we think about it from a task planning perspective. And then we also need to think about it from an emotional preparedness perspective. So some of the things that over the years I've seen that create situations in the home that make staying home very difficult, or lead to a situation physically that makes staying home difficult. And one of those is pets, because we all need and love our pets if we have them. And so one of the planning pieces is, and the reason I say that is the injuries of people who have fallen over their cats or took their dog out on a leash and fell and broke their back. Some of those things are absolutely debilitating for the rest of the life. And it's a matter of thinking through how to stay safe with your pet, for example. So that's an example of how, and for some people, it's an issue of going, okay, am I still safe with my pet in the home? Can I still take care of my pet the way I want to? Or do I have a plan that my daughter may take it and bring it over to visit? So some of those things are critical to being able to stay safely at home, but they're not a matter of how many steps do you go up, but just as important for staying physically safe, because obviously our pets provide a great emotional support to us within our homes. And so being able to think through what is the point where maybe I already need a backup plan. You know, what if Fido is to the point where he needs a lot more exercise than I can provide for him? How else could we manage that? Is there someone who's going to do pet walking for me to keep him going while still living with me? But those are just some ideas around other things within the home.
And that's something we don't think about. I like the point that Mary Faith had stressed this, and it's really what we want this seminar to stress. Yes, there are tasks we need to do to be prepared, and that's what we'll be outlining today. But that emotional preparedness. What if? I know you're never going to leave your home, you're never going to do this, but what if you were to have a stroke? What if? And we're going to be talking, I think, down here a little bit later about caregivers. That's always a concern about supporting the caregiver, but that, you know, what if? So we've found that phrase to be very helpful as we talk about, I like Mary Faith's point, emotional preparedness. You know, we're facing new challenges in our lives, perhaps. But would you, Brielle? I didn't give you much warning,
Yeah.
but well, in fact, I want to expand. Well, Brielle, would you tell them a little bit about some of the resources? The reason I say that is the resource list that we had. Would you introduce that to people? You've done a tremendous amount of work on that.
Sure. So we created, it actually started when we were working on Vibrant Living, and it's a resource guide that includes a lot of different health and human services type programs and nonprofits and different organizations in the Round Rock community, or I'm sorry, in the Georgetown community, that can help you have phone numbers and emails and website addresses there for you to look up different areas like driving safety, food prep, information about this home environment safety piece. So throughout today, you'll be hearing about this resource guide, and we will send that to you after the webinar so that you've got a copy of it. You can print it out. It's a quick resource. And then one area to point out is at the top of it is 211texas.org. And that is also a guide that's a search engine online, and you can put in any area that you are looking for into that search engine and put your zip code, and it will give you the resources of vendors and groups in the area that can help you with any of these topics.
And
we might all
go ahead, Mary Faith.
I was just going to mention that right along with what she said about 211 online is that 211 is actually what you can dial on the phone, just like you
Correct.
dial 911. You can dial 211 to get to those resources also.
So as Brielle mentioned, we did adapt this resource list. Brielle was the assistant when I was leading Vibrant Living, and it was last year we had to reschedule because of COVID and still weren't able to do it this year. So that's been just put on hold, but a lot of work was done on that. And since we were sponsors of Vibrant Living, we decided we would incorporate that as one of the resources. It's not comprehensive. You'll see as we go through some of these categories, it becomes never ending, but it's a starting place. And I always welcome as people come up with great resources, share them with us and let us know. And we want it. That's one of the great things of this community is we see a lot of sharing going on. And also for many of you within your neighborhoods, I know Sun City has worked very hard. Well, not Sun City, a group of Sun Cityans. A couple of them are on our call today. I think Marianne Lish and Louise Smith, they worked on within the Sun City directory sharing our senior resources. So you'll see a lot of those included on this list, and I'm sure other neighborhoods have something, but those are the kinds of resources we need to be aware of sooner rather than later. So we just want to call that to your attention. On home environment, you never know. And if people are living in two-story homes, there's certainly a safety planning feature there. I know Brielle's just gone through this with her in-laws, out of state, 2-story home, no shower downstairs. So home modification is possible. Brielle's husband is a great home modification person. We've learned to make a usable bathroom for his mother downstairs. So you never know what's possible to make it easier for people to remain in their home. So anyway, some information about home environment. I forgot to mention at the beginning, the way our format is, we will invite questions from the audience towards the end, but we've learned for time's sake and because the way things overlap, we'll go through and then we will have time for you to ask questions. So if you have questions along the way or resources, jot them down. And then when we open it up for discussion from the floor, we invite for you to join us. All right. Another major concern is planning for transportation. And as we look for that, some things we wanted to highlight. Just that whole issue of safety for mature drivers. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to participate in a CarFit program. I'm learning more about it. Last year with Megan Frazier, we were planning to have a CarFit workshop where seniors bring your car and it's checked out for heights and for where the seat belts process and mirrors and just a lot of things that can enhance the safety. Well, that was before COVID, and then that changed everything. But they do have online virtual CarFit programs now that you might want to check out. We have the resource there. And we don't sometimes think of that for transportation, but it is. How long can we continue to drive and be as safe as we can for ourselves and for others? Being aware of our local transportation options, one of the things that's in our resource, of course, a lot of people are familiar with Faith in Action. It's a wonderful resource for taking people to doctor's appointments or others, and they are accepting new clients. Brielle was just checking on that for us. One of those, during COVID wasn't as accessible, more limited, but that is one source. A lot of churches have their own ways of networking. But have you thought through if you were going, and maybe it's just short term, maybe it's after surgery, you just need something for 2 or 6 to 6 weeks, but is it long term? Here's a question or a situation. It's amazing how many times we hear behind the scenes, neighbors will say, we can only take our neighbor so many times, we've got to know other resources. So as we look ahead to what we might need to know or to know how to use Uber or Lyft or other resources that we have outlined there. Mary Faith, are there some tips you can provide for us in that area?
Sure. I think that looking at there are the options that you've just listed of people who can drive us for all kinds of events and needs. Part of the planning is having a plan with whomever your support system is, to have a plan in place that you write, because it always helps us remember if we put it into writing, of how will I know that I'm no longer able to drive is one piece of it that we're talking about here in terms of assessment. But the other piece is who will tell me when I'm no longer safe to drive and I'm still driving and I don't want to give it up and I don't want to tell anybody and I'm going to hide the car keys because I will keep my car. And then you have a great deal of discussion. And so planning ahead with your family or whoever is your support person that you're willing to talk with, and writing nothing elaborate, but just writing a plan. If my daughter comes to me and says, "Mom, it's time, let's talk about it," you've written down that you're willing to have that conversation. What are some of the keys that you all think will be important? What are some of the options within your family or within your support system for knowing when it's time to make a change? Maybe you start using a different service for specific things and continue to drive certain places. All of those things are discussions to be had because the options are, as many of us as there are that many options. But to have the conversation is very important because that's one of the things that's really vital to staying safe.
I think an important part there, what Mary Faith, in encouraging us to have something in writing. A lot of us stay at kind of the global general plan, but what would I really, what are some things that could apply to me? Brielle, would you tell us a little bit about the senior binder that we've given people a list that they could develop and include resources like that?
Yeah, so we, again, after the seminar, we will send you a list of some ideas that you might want to create your own binder of information kind of resource for yourself and for your family, for your caretakers, things that are going to include who are my emergency contacts, who are my transportation options, how am I going to take care of, who is my vet? We were talking about pet care. What does that look like? A list of maybe medications that you're taking. Just a general binder of information that you'll have access to if you need to look up the information. And if somebody comes into your home and they need to access that information, then they have the resource available to them. So if you include things like your legal documents or anything like that, you might want to separate that and make sure that that's in a private, secure location and only people that are very trusted have access to those types of documents. But your general day-to-day, these are my doctors, and this is their contact information. These are vendors that I use regularly. And so this is just a quick resource guide. So we're going to send you a checklist. If you want to prepare and have something available in your home, these are some ideas of information worksheets and things like that that you might want to include in a binder of your own, just for safety and just as a great resource for you and for your family and your loved ones and caregivers.
It can be a peace of mind, not only for the senior, but for family. I've seen a number of times when something happens, it may be a temporary situation, but family comes to help and they don't know who to turn to. They don't know that mom or dad already has a relationship with this group. And so having that and letting people know where it is, but also protecting obviously confidential matters like our bank accounts or whatever. And we're still looking at some other ways to support people in developing their own binders. I think Leslie Ford is on our call today. I know she had shared with us some things she had put together for herself. We may see if we can get her involved too. One of the things about when is it time to quit driving? We know that's a tough conversation. Another one of the services from Functional Stability Mobility is a driving assessment evaluation, where in this case it's Megan Fraser. They're trained to help to do an assessment. Is it safe for this person to drive? You can continue driving, but going on Interstate 35 or even Williams might not be a good idea. What are some alternative routes? But what about safety? Again, I know this has been an important resource for adult children. Mom or dad just won't listen, and maybe it's doctor's orders that they, have a driving assessment, but those resources are there and important to know about. I know I was visiting with a couple. I was their realtor when they sold their home a couple of years ago, decided to move to an independent living community. And I was revisiting with them for collecting some data for some of our programs here. So what caused you to make the decision? Why did you decide it was time to move? And the wife spoke up very, very candidly. She said, I was driving and I almost hit someone. And she said, I went home, told my husband I was not driving anymore. And I just felt that we needed to both reduce driving. When we can own up to that, that's significant. It's hard, but we have to be aware for our safety and for the safety of others too. So, okay, so some things to think about: transportation, being prepared with that. Another category that we had identified, meals or food. And of course, after COVID, and a lot more options now, but of course we do have Meals on Wheels. Seniors can qualify for that. And we have the contact information in the resource guide. Of course, now we have a lot more delivery from stores or the meal kits. It's not only having the meals, but are they nutritious? That's one of the things we often see with seniors. Just opening a can of chili every day for lunch may not be the best long term for your own health and all. But how do we plan for more nutritious meals? And like I say, now we have a lot more options after going through COVID. Let's turn to Mary Faith again. Any words of wisdom about meals, food sources, or the importance of?
Well, no, I think you're touching on the absolute importance of meals and hydration to stay healthy and stay independent. Interestingly, the two things that I think are important that I've seen over the years, one is dehydration in those of us who are living independently and live at home and are still active. But dehydration quite often leads to an emergency room visit, which sometimes then leads to other things, or it can lead to falls. Some of those things that can actually have serious impact on our independence. So staying hydrated and understanding how to do that is important. A lot of times we find that people quit drinking as much as they should because of incontinence issues. And so having those discussions about, okay, how am I going to deal with incontinence and stay hydrated? Those are just real world possible things that have to be discussed, but those two things together can keep you safely at home. So meals and food all fall into that category. The other thing is to remember that if we're aging in place and we're starting to bring in services like Visiting Angels, then remembering that meal preparation is something that they can help with. If all of a sudden I've just had both my knees replaced and bumped my head, and so I'm not cooking for 6 weeks, they can assist with that. And so that way your chances of staying home while you recuperate increase greatly, because good nutrition is obviously part of the healing process. So using your resources for the temporary in-between pieces around nutrition and hydration are really vital.
Good point. And yes, they can help us with that. So we appreciate all those opportunities. Okay, let's go to another area. And this one, I think a lot of times we don't think about as much. This may fall more into that emotional preparedness category. We think about our home and what the topics we just discussed. But a critical point for our maintaining a healthy life is interaction, social engagement, with fitness too. But a concern that I have seen in talking with people, I'm staying in my home, I'm not moving out to one of those places. I don't get out anymore. I used to like to play bridge, but it's too hard for me to get out. And we find it's possible that the world just shrinks around people. How are you going to plan ahead for social interaction, clubs, activities? What can you do to keep yourself actively engaged in the physical part too? We just know the importance of that. And some people, I can't volunteer, I'm in my home. Well, there are lots of ways with different groups volunteering to make phone calls, or there are other opportunities for that. But just planning ahead, the interaction. When people will say, I don't want to give up my independence, but if you're not interacting with people, if you're just in solitary lifestyle, that's not necessarily healthy either. So there's some challenges. So let's see what Mary Faith can share with us in this broad category.
Very broad category. Well, there's several things. One is who we were when we were younger and who we are now are part of the question. Just because we're getting older and living at home and want to stay independent doesn't mean all of a sudden we got to go out and play bridge and do the golf course and go salsa dancing. If that's not what our life has been, it's a choice. If we want to make it those things because we didn't have an opportunity when we were working and raising family, so be it. But there's no guilt involved in saying, nope, I still like sitting at home and reading my book and watching the birds. And that's how I've always been, and that's how I want to be. It's okay. And I think that's the part that's really important, is to remember we're all of a sudden not supposed to change who we are because we're older. But the other piece of that is to remember that as we age in place, it depends on who's around us, who our support system is. How do we know? Sometimes it's really easy as we get older to begin to become more reclusive than usual. And who's checking on me? Who knows I'm okay? And quite often that's, sometimes it's couples where one of the couples becomes very debilitated and the other becomes the caregiver. And that's another whole topic and another whole session is caregiving for spouses. So we won't go into that now, but it can change everything in life in independence when you become the caregiver. Conversely, you know, who is the next generation who's going to be available to us as we're aging independently to say, yes, I like reading my books and watching my birds, but who's going to check and just make sure things haven't gone in the route of impending dementia? And am I, you know, some of those things that become very, can be hidden. And we want someone who's a truth teller involved in our lives to help us know if we need additional support in something that may not be available or obvious to us. And the other thing, and we talked about this real briefly, and I'm going to use this as an example of life in COVID land as we talk about it, is that the past year has become incredibly difficult for many people. And so things can change when we have a forced major life event like we have here, but it doesn't have to be a pandemic. So for example, this past year, the number of our generation who have developed alcoholism has skyrocketed with all of the attendant debilities and social costs that come with that. And it really was nothing that was apparent in so many of them until the pandemic and the social isolation crept in. And so having, being aware of some of those things that can, as we age, what we used to drink 20 years ago may have a very different impact on us now due to age and other medical comorbidities. So being aware of that, being willing to talk about it, knowing that if, in this particular example, if all of a sudden assistance is needed, being aware and mindful and having those people around who will speak up and be truth tellers again. Most of all, we need to be honest with each other. And that's the hardest thing when we're aging in place and we want to stay independent, being willing to hear and being willing to tell.
So important, so important. I liked your phrase, truth tellers. You know, it's both ways. I mean, if we do not really identify what's going on in our lives, but is someone willing to, it's not intended to be judgmental, but intended to be supportive. And that's back to planning, that if something were to happen, what would we do? But just on the other hand, we know there's so many wonderful kind of free flow network groups that develop just in social groups, checking in with each other, calling each morning or each evening, just to make sure someone's answering the phone. And I know a number of you check on friends even when they move away. You still call at 8 o'clock every morning to make sure you're both up and about. So those are important. again, another form of planning. Okay, now Mary Faith kind of led us into this. The next one that we talked about is caregiving. So we know about our providers with, as indicated with the asterisk there, we have a provider contact info sheet. You want to tell us, are those the questions, Brielle, that or they're listed on the resource guide?
Right, and this would be something that you would want to include if you were to create a binder for your family or for yourself, that you would list all of the providers that you have and their contact information, so they have easy access to that. All your caregivers know who else is in the picture and working with you.
Great. And you know, we've discussed this before in other programs. To know, Stacy mentioned there are a variety of home care resources there. And if you need home health, that's another category. We've just had a panel about those two areas. But going ahead and talking with them. I don't need that service right now. But if I wait until the crisis occurs, it's a little bit difficult to do that research and it's left to somebody else. But, and you know, caregivers who value their work, they will appreciate people being prepared. And so, you know, we have a list of, again, it's not the exhaustive list, but some that we've worked with. And so people will be available to help when needed. We talked last month, we talked about the cost of senior living. And one of the costs is to really think realistically about, if I need home care, how much is that going to be costing me? Just so we plan for it. It's easy for us to think, oh, I can stay in my home. That's not going to be as expensive as moving somewhere else. Well, if you need quite a bit of home care, those prices can add up, which is fine if you're prepared for it. So we just want people to think realistically about that. Then the next one, the questions to ask, we mentioned that earlier, that will be one of the resources. I think the one that we often overlook is care for the caregiver. We see a lot of couples where one is the caregiver, and it's not unusual for the caregiver to end up with a greater problem or even pass away. They just give out. And so what kind of respite opportunities are there for the caregiver? How do caregivers keep themselves going? And I think this is and we have some resources about that, or agencies that we could turn to. But Mary Faith, I know that's an important topic to you. You mentioned it briefly, but go ahead and talk to us a little bit more about being aware of caregivers and their support. And here, when I say that, I'm primarily thinking of family taking care of each other.
Sure. Well, there are resources for care of the caregiver and for respite care. Some of those things that, if you are in that kind of situation where you're really spending the majority of your time in the caregiving role, we know that can create stress that is absolutely overwhelming. There are a couple of things that'll be in your binder, I believe, in your resource guide, but I might highlight those right now. It's both the Family Elder Care Program and Area Agency on Aging. You might want to really look at those because they have programs that are designed for in-home care of the caregiver. They have respite care. As Stacey was saying, they're actually a contracted provider for the Area Agency on Aging program. So hooking up with both of those agencies, just looking them up online or calling to see what's available in that particular respect. But if you are in that role of being the caregiver, here again, the planning is vitally important. So that if you find yourself, and what happens for all of us is it just sort of builds, and we don't realize that we're becoming that over 6 months. All of a sudden, it's our whole life. But how did we get there? And so, because we're starting to do what we need to do to maintain where we are in life. And so, here again, it's a little bit back to the truth tellers of being able to ask the questions of ourselves and family members to say, okay, I am now up 18 hours a day because she's not able to sleep at night, and I'm afraid she's going to fall when she goes to the toilet, and I'm exhausted now, and I can't get out to the store because, and so being able to ask those questions and step back for a moment to say, okay, when do I need help? When do I need respite? Is this sustainable? Can we sustain this long here in our home together? And what would that take to make it happen so that I'm not the one who's found on the floor when they come? And I mean, that happened to my husband's grandmother, to his grandparents. She was the dynamo caregiver and took care of him after his stroke and after his heart attack and after his debility. Then she went 90 miles an hour. And she lived out of town and wasn't answering the phone, and they found her that she had died in the home, and he was still just sitting in his chair. And that was 2 days of terror. And you don't want that. And so how do you prepare and make plans so that that's not the case when you're the caregiver? So using the resources, but having a plan. And what I will tell you is that without a plan, when I get called into the emergency room at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning, at 2 o'clock in the morning, with someone who is an exhausted caregiver who brings their spouse or partner into the emergency room and goes, I can't do it anymore. And 2 o'clock on a Saturday morning in the middle of the night on a weekend is very, very, very difficult to help develop a safe plan straight out of the emergency room. And so that's my begging is think plan. So so you can avoid that absolute rupture in terms of your life planning.
And you don't like to think of stories like Mary Faith just shared about her husband's grandparents, I believe it was. And I meant to relook at those statistics, but I think it's about 75, maybe you know, Mary Faith, 76% of the time it's often the caregiver who may pass away or have greater complications than the person they're caring for because they just give out. And I was on a call this week with other senior downsizing coaches such as I am from across the country, and we were sharing stories and resources. And that came up a number of times. That happens, and we don't like to realize it, but it's being prepared for it. Along that line too, the couple, but it's also, I think, how do we involve adult children? I've seen stories, I heard one this past week where the woman has just given out and she really wants to make arrangements for her husband. But the children, adult children say, oh, but mom, no, you have to take care of him. That's your responsibility. Well, we've got to be a team here. And we can't overdo it for ourselves. So making people aware of that is an important one. Caregiver University, that's the area agency on the aging, isn't it, Mary Faith, where they have an educational program for caregivers about taking care of the person and themselves. So it's another one of those great resources, but area agency and the aging family elder care are both mentioned in our resource guide. And for people to do their own homework to find out what's available, what could be helpful. Would be that one. Okay, let's move on. Legal documents. We go, what does that have to do with aging in place? Well, it's a major part of being prepared should something be needed. And we're not going to go into this in depth. We've had other programs, but we just want to highlight it. But there is one we are going to highlight. Most of us are aware, yes, I need a durable power of attorney. Reminding people that power of attorney is only good as long as the person is living. if something should happen, that's the end of that power of attorney. I know from some interesting real estate transactions when something would happen. But a durable power of attorney, having the medical power of attorney, if someone could make decisions. The psychiatric mental health power of attorney, I will admit that is a brand new one to me. Mary Faith introduced that, and we're going to let her talk about it in just a minute. But also the importance of will, and if it's appropriate, trust, advanced directives. We've got some great resources and people who will help us with that, and we encourage you to always be prepared. Mary Faith, would you tell us a little bit about the psychiatric mental health power of attorney?
Sure. Just this is part of that planning that we quite often don't even know about, but it is very important in our generation because as we get older, it doesn't mean that we don't have mental health concerns, just like all the way growing up. But something changes in terms of the ability to access inpatient psychiatric care because the way your medical power of attorney is set up, it allows your medical power of attorney, if you needed to get into some kind of care and you're not cognizant of what you need, they can make that happen. But the one thing that is excluded from the medical power of attorney document in Texas is the ability to ask for inpatient mental health care. And so what happens, I'll just do a general little overview, but what happens is, if you need inpatient mental health care and you do not have anyone who can sign you in basically with a mental health power of attorney, then the mental health code is set up such that when you're our age, if there's anything that someone thinks might have dementia associated with it, or there's a question about it, generally speaking, you won't be able to go into a psychiatric hospital. Now, what that does is it puts you in a position where mental health care, acute mental health care, quite often goes untreated, which can lead to an amazing rapid decline in ability to be independent when it's something that could have been treated fairly rapidly. And I think about someone I saw recently who was, he had a long-standing history of bipolar disorder and had been treated and very functional in his life, but needed to be on his medications. And his caregiver was no longer with him, and he quit taking his medications, and so he had an exacerbation of his bipolar disorder. It wasn't dementia, it was his long-standing mental health concern, but he was not able to get inpatient care, and all kinds of things had to be put into place to try to assist him, and it was very, very, very difficult to do that without someone who could speak for him around issues of mental health. So it's a document that's there. You can get it online, just like other powers of attorney. But you have to remember that when you need it, it's too late, because nobody can. By the time you need someone to act on that, it means you're not in the capacity mentally to sign, to give that designation to someone. So it's one of those things we hope none of us ever need. So it makes it kind of out of sight, out of mind. But just as important is our medical power of attorney.
And the whole mental health question, because we could do, and I know that's a very important area to you, Mary Faith. So many times we don't recognize watching parent. I know with my mother, and it was depression, but I didn't understand what all was contributing to it. But I think we are becoming more aware of that, and that's just for people to be knowledgeable. So encourage that, and if people need more information, Mary Faith could probably respond to some of us or help us, but be aware of that. Again, I don't need it right now, but when I do need it, it's too late to put it in place. So it's one of those situations.
One of those things we hope we never use.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so those were the major areas. And then just to summarize before I open this up for questions, the resources that we've referred to throughout, these are the ones that Brielle, you want to, I guess we've talked about most of them, but you want to highlight any more for us or
Sure.
teach people about what's coming?
Yeah, so what's coming in a couple of days, the blog will include a copy of this seminar will be posted onto our blog, and we'll send you an email at that time, and it's going to include these documents. So it's going to have that local senior resource guide that we talked about that's specific to Georgetown. Again, it's not all inclusive, but it kind of get you started at least. There's a lot of really good resources in there, and it's divided by category, so it's just it's an easy resource to use. And then we're going to also provide you with questions to ask home care providers. If you're having people come into your house, what do you want to know about them before they start giving you or your loved ones care? And so this is a great little handout that Virginia put together with some really good questions to ask anyone coming into your home. And then tips for aging in place. This is smart tips about the home. That first slide that we talked about was the home safety piece of this. So it's, you know, if I look around my bathroom, what areas do I need to look at for safety, general safety, outside safety, things like that. It's also going to include the this action plan worksheet is more like the checklist for the binder, and that's again going to be who are your emergency contacts, who are your caregivers. Again, just another quick resource guide for you, for your loved ones to be able to get that information. And then we will also send you a link to that AARP Home Fit worksheet page that there's, I think, 5 or 6 documents that you can download there that will help you go through your whole home to make sure that safety is your number one. And like Mary, Faith, and Virginia have both said today, really the bottom line is planning. And I keep hearing that over and over. If we can plan to stay in our homes and we put some of these plans in place now before there's an urgent need, we're able to deal with that a lot better. And you know, Virginia talks a lot about those personal stories, and for us, it's been with my in-laws, and there were no plans put in place, and it's been a real struggle for us for the last 1.5 to 2 years to manage keeping my mother-in-law in her home. And had we done a little bit of this as a family beforehand, I feel like we would be in a different place now. So I encourage you to look at these resources and to start thinking about and taking action on making those plans.
I think the key point, thanks for sharing, Brielle, and referencing your personal situation, is Brielle and I work together. She's always saying, yeah, that's what we need, and for her family situation. But taking action, you know, we can share information, but what do we do? And that's where we encourage you to do the plans, get your binder together, and be informed. What I'd like to do now is open it up for questions from the floor. You have your raise hand down the lower part of your screen. If you have a question or something you would like to contribute, if you'll raise your hand, and then Brielle's going to help us monitor that and see if we have some people who'd like to join into the conversation. Hopefully. Okay. There we go. Judy Mayo. Let's see, are you in? Oh, sorry. Okay, Judy?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful.
Yeah, I would just like to offer a suggestion concerning the interaction opportunities. You know, my husband, Sid, has Parkinson's, and he has a lot of trouble with mobility. And so one idea is, instead of trying to make him struggle to get to the car and me struggle with the wheelchair and him struggle to get out of the car and all that, is just have people come to our house. And we have organized several well, one in particular, the group of 7 guys that come every other Saturday to play 42. And everybody loves it. They're all about the same age, and it's a lot of fun. And we've organized a couple of other things, and I'm going to work on that to try to bring more social interactions into the home. It's just an idea.
That's a great idea. Thanks for sharing that, Judy. And I want to just pick up, I would anticipate that people are well aware of it, but an amazing resource for Parkinson's or other motor challenges. I've forgotten what the terminology is. Forgive me, Mary Jane Berry, who's on the call. But GAPS, Georgetown Area Parkinson's Support Group. What amazing resources, and stay active. And so if that should be an area that you're impacted by or know others, check out Georgetown Area Parkinson's Support Group, GAPS, their monthly meeting. And if Mary Jane wants to jump in to say anything, that would be fine. Louise Smith, she's one who was involved with a resource guide for Sun City seniors. You want to hear from Louise?
Am I online now?
Yes, you are. Hi. Oh, I like your picture.
I just wanted to say how much this group complements our city group, which is still working and forming and what have you. And I'm looking forward to getting the email with the links and things, because we're limited as to what we can put in our Sun City information.
Yeah.
To get people more Georgetown information. And thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate your commenting on that, Louise. I remember because I was involved in a lot of those discussions, and we all have different restrictions, and with Sun City and what can be promoted. But even as individuals, this is not true. I mean, it's true for other areas, but that's a community where we see a lot of people, okay, we're aging in place, but we may reach a point we need more support. And I think that's what, Sun City's an active adult community, but if I want to stay in my home forever and ever, what can help me do that? And there have been several people there who have taken the leadership role in that. Louise, I mentioned Mary Ann Lish and others, but how great when neighbors and people rally together to support each other. So I hope this will be a good addition for you all, Louise.
Thank you.
Oh, look whose hand is up. Mary Jane Berry. Mary Jane? Can you unmute yourself? There, Mary Jane?
There we go.
There.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If anybody doesn't know Mary Jane Berry, if you ever wanted to meet the Energizer Bunny in person, you just need to meet Mary Jane Berry.
Well, thank you, Virginia. I just want to say thank you very much for the plug for Georgetown Area Parkinson's Support Group. We are a positive support group and will help anyone. And the word you were looking for was movement disorders. So any way we can help anyone, we are certainly open to it. And I just wanted to say thank you very much. Also, you have one of a board member on your staff when you had Stacy up there. We are creating a brand new nonprofit, Central Texas Advocates for Parkinson's, and it'll be in this entire community of Williamson County and even outside. But the bottom line is, thank you for the plug. And if anybody ever has any Parkinson or movement disorder problems, feel free to just share my name out there. And also they can get involved with not only our meetings, but our free exercise classes.
And I liked what you said. I don't know if you said positive approach or whatever, but I know I've been to a few of the meetings and programs, and it's not a poor me, I have Parkinson's. It's very much stay active, engage, what I do to maintain my quality of life. And when I've met some people who weren't involved with that group, and no, you need to go check it out. It is positive. It's let's let's make this and keep us involved and active. And I talking to a gentleman, they were doing, I don't remember what kind of boxing it was, but he said, my wife and I are both doing so much better now that we're doing something like that. So great resource through GAPS. So
Thank you.
Any other questions or resources? I appreciate people sharing resources and like sharing ideas like Judy did. So that was great. Any others? This is your great time to ask. No, you can't get into personal situations, but yet Mary Faith can be a very general resource if there's some general things that people would like information on.
How would we contact her?
How to contact Mary Faith? We'll put that in our follow-up too. Probably your email, Mary Faith. Is that okay?
Sure.
Or if you want to, I mean, however you want to handle it. We do want people to be aware. So
Sure. My email is really hard. It's maryfaithsterk@gmail.com.
that's pretty taxing, Mary Faith, but it's Sterk, S-T-E-R-K. For those of us who keep wanting to spell it Stark, it's Sterk. And but thank you for your willingness to, and you're just such a supporter throughout the community. Okay. Other questions? Well, I hope that people are using this time to be pondering about, oh no, I need to be doing this, and that next step of taking action. And we always encourage people to do that. If anyone thinks, oh, hearing from the Gunflint Trail in Minnesota, Nancy or Dan Strayer. Oh no, that's because I had called on you earlier. I'm sorry, I don't think that, or no, it's a new hand. Nancy? Can you, yeah. Okay.
All right. I would like to give a plug to the Phillips Lifeline system. My husband got this through our United Healthcare system, and it has been absolutely amazing. He's at the stage where he's having a lot of falls, and they are on that line and responding within a minute. It's just amazing what they do. I would shout out for that program in, all the time. It's just very good. It's totally covered with our insurance with United Healthcare, but even if it's not covered and you're having falls, that is something that's an excellent resource. And they will even stay on the line and wait for you to get up, just to be sure that you're okay. Like having another person in the house, and I really, really love it.
That's great. And so obviously you live here, but you're up in Minnesota, so that follows you wherever you go then?
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Hi, Dan, and we hear you.
I better watch what I say then.
You better be on good behavior.
You're the only one that I see that knows me by face, so I better set a good example.
That's right.
Yeah, we've had a lot of trouble. We've had a lot of trouble with the situation in terms of getting doctors to be available to take a look at prescriptions, referrals, etc. Medical field, of course, is just swamped with the elderly needs. That's probably the biggest frustration beyond finding myself on the floor.
Yeah. Thank you so much for these sessions.
Oh, you're welcome. And I appreciate your being with us, and even when you're up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
The point, one thing, and Mary Faith, you might be able to speak to this. It seems like we're seeing more of medical I think United Healthcare has the home consultation. We're on that, we get calls, haven't taken advantage of it, but where they would come into our home or a virtual conference. And I think we're seeing more resources if we know how to contact them, if they can help us. One of the concerns we often have is we have so many different entities prescribing medication in particular, and someone keeping an eye on how they all work together. Anything you can share about that, Mary Faith?
Sure. a lot of the insurers are now putting programs in place because just as you talked about, even the lifeline, though all of those things are designed to help you have a more comprehensive plan of how you're going to manage things medically and within the home. The thing I would say is that those that are attached to your health insurance, make sure you know what the full scope of services are that they're offering. And the other thing, I know this is going to sound a little wonky, but make sure you actually know who's calling you and offering the services. Just
Good
because
point.
there have been a whole bunch of scams built around that, and then people coming into your homes. And so not to get fearful, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying make sure you verify who's calling you and offering the services. And the health insurance companies actually all do a very good job of presenting themselves well. So just make sure you're really talking to your insurer in their care management and case management programs.
Good point. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, wonderful. I want to highlight then our next virtual seminar, and it will be our last virtual seminar webinar. We will be live starting in August, but July 15th, we have Is Your Home Taking the Fun Out of Life? I like that. It's kind of an interesting follow-up to Aging in Place, but so whether or not we're taking care of repairs or out having a good time, I just have to share a story that happened yesterday. I was visiting a 55 plus apartment community, and we'd just been with one of my real estate clients. We'd just been to the closing on the sale of her home. She's moved to this 55 plus apartment, and she wanted to take me on a tour. I was most impressed. I think sometimes we don't think that the 55 plus apartments have amenities like perhaps independent living does, but they did. And we're going through, of course, from room for cards and Mexican train dominoes and all kinds of activities, to the saltwater pool, to the dog grooming room. She reports that Gabby really likes her special baths and the neat hair dryer or dryer they can dry the dogs on. And she just kept saying, you know, it's just such a relief not to be worrying about my home, even though I had yard care and all kinds of maintenance taking care of the home. It was still, is it happening? Well, while we're touring, we struck up a conversation with a gentleman. He and his wife had moved there in September, and he just starts in about, oh my goodness, what a relief to be here. And they had lived in a 2-story home. He said, we never went upstairs or had it in years. And finally, they decided the time was right to make this move, and how much he's enjoying. He's more interactive. And I should have pulled out my phone and made a quick recording. It was a great PR piece for our next webinar about Is Your Home. And this one, we will have a panel of seniors who will be sharing their experiences of making a transition from home ownership to a less stressful, more carefree lifestyle, we hope. So that it's always fun. I know people love it when we have our panels of seniors. So we'll have a group with in July. And Riel, anything else we need to cover? Or Mary Faith, have you thought of anything else you want to, words of wisdom for us?
Plan, plan, plan. Ask the questions, be a truth teller. I think those are the pieces that are hardest for us, but so necessary.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And one other thing that we have in terms of helping people plan, we had our first official club meeting of the Seniors Downsizing Smarter Club. And this is, we meet monthly, the first Thursday of each month. You make a commitment to join. So it's for people who are looking to downsize, maybe not immediately, some are, but there's some people who know in the next year or two, but they want to start now. getting rid of the items that they've collected over the years. But if you're interested in that, on our website, I believe we have information, or you can contact our number. And we've just started. We'll be adding people periodically, but it really is a support group. And so even at our first meeting, it was really fun to hear as people were sharing resources. And we've got people from, they know they're moving in November to a specific community, to some who are struggling with the decision, to, but I'm staying here, others trying to decide where kids are. But we all learn. And by having that support group, and people set their own action goals, so that we're trying to really encourage people to take action. And I'm excited that we've had people to join us, and we look forward to continuing with our Seniors Downsizing Smarter Club. Okay. But unless we have anything else, then we will adjourn for today, and hope to see you in July. And a big, big thank you to Mary Faith for sharing her wisdom and expertise, and a great thanks to Jeff for managing this, and Brielle working with us to put together the resources, and to our attendees today. Forgot to do the poll. We had a poll set up for how many seminars we had. I think it's supposed to have around 50 people online. Now, some of the people I know called, they said we registered, but now we have a conflict. Like we said, it's recorded. It will be up on our blog next week. So it's always available, and it remains up there. But I appreciate people taking time to be with us, and hopefully encourage you to take the next steps, so that we really can prolong staying in your home as long as you can in healthy, safe ways. And then when there are alternatives that need to be considered, we know that there are resources that can help on that. Otherwise, have a happy 4th of July, and we will see you hopefully on July 15th.